What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. It is officially game day, Lions Bengals. But before the game today, we got some unfortunate news that we need to discuss. Also, we have a couple of players that have been elevated for today's game that we're going to give some attention to as well. So let's get right into it. And that is Taylor Decker, who reportedly this morning has been listed as doubtful for today's game due to the shoulder injury that he is dealing with. He hasn't really practiced over the last few weeks, but he's typically played on Sundays. But today, he's been downgraded to doubtful. So I'm hoping that this ends up helping him, assuming that he's not going to play today, that he gets this game off, and then maybe next week he's in a much better spot because he essentially had potentially up to about 2 weeks. This is a big loss not having Taylor Decker. I would assume Giovanni Manu is going to be the next guy up because it sounded like he was going to be the next guy up last time we discussed this. Now, for me, the biggest change there is probably going to be the run game because I didn't think Manu was a people mover consistently in this year's preseason. And that's an area where, against these defensive ends, I thought the Lions would have success with Decker and Sewell. I thought they'd win those matchups way more often than not. As many big names they have over there, high investments, Miles Murphy, Trey Hendrickson, Cam Sample, Joseph Osai. I thought the Lions would have success there. I'd love that matchup on paper. So I thought the inside runs, even if you're stuffed up a bit in the interior, you'd have time to kind of pick your way through because the edge rushers would dominate. And then also Demetrius Knight on the line of scrimmage. Not having Taylor Decker takes a lot away from that. Plus, you lose some of maybe your flexibility as well, where Decker throughout this season has been able to be a puller for you. He's been successful as a move blocker. So I think you lose some of that in this game. I would assume that this means that maybe you get more straightforward outside zone rushing, maybe less of your downhill attack. I do think that you can create movement with your guards and your centers, kind of like other teams have as well, specifically a team like Minnesota that was banged up at the offensive line as well. So I could lean to more of that offensively and that kind of approach rather than some of the true downhill rushing. I still like attacking really wide on these guys. Taking the DNs now out of the play, I think would be ideal. Maybe some pin pull looks, making their DBs tackle, but going right at a Hendrickson and just kind of peeling him out of the play. Creative looks like that, I think, could also be effective in the run game now today, using receivers in the run game as well. Maybe Gibbs in the slot a bit, things like that. And also, it's now on the table for sure the Lions use some jumbo package in this game. And if not, heavy personnel sets. I kind of anticipated that anyways, multiple tight ends, and really leaning on those guys to give support against these DNs, some double teams. Again, if you're going to go with some outside zone runs, create double teams, fast motion double teams. And if you do that, you should be okay, even with going to Giovanni Manu's side. Now, in pass protection, that's probably where the biggest concern comes into play, just for matchup base. He's probably going to see a good amount of Trey Hendrickson because of how Trey aligns. So that is sort of concerning, assuming that Giovanni Manu just steps in at left tackle. That is a bit concerning. But that said, I don't think it really changes the overall approach of how I'm attacking this team too much. I'm really focused on taking what's there, a lot of level one throws, just getting the ball underneath, letting us do work after the catch. The biggest problem would be hurting some of your potential explosive opportunities to attack that split coverage defense, those cover six looks, attack the middle of the field. You may not get time to get there occasionally, but the real focus then will just have to be, hey, Sewell's got to be 101 and Manu's got to get some support. And if you can get some support in those spots, those key spots, that's how you'll still find a way to open up those shot plays. The problem is it probably won't come from like straight drop back of five-man protection. You'll probably need to have extra bodies in to allow those shots to potentially develop. You'll have to really work to set those up. I think that's okay. You know, play action looks to potentially open those vertical shots, and again, just taking what's there level one. So for me, I think the pass game matchup-wise is a problem, but I don't think it's overall going to impact the game as much as what it could be for the run game. There is still time to get in on the action for today's game slate, whether that's, hey, you want to go in, you want to bet some spreads, you want to do some same game parlays like I do, maybe you want to do some game props, whatever that may be, the spot to do it is over with my bookie using code DOSE. So right now, for me, I'm going to end up putting together a little same game parlay for Lions Bengals. First off, it's a 9.5 point spread. I think this is important since the Taylor Decker injury, but I still like the Lions here. Typically, I just take the Lions to win. The over-under is at 49.5. My score, I think that'll be under, but typically I'm wrong with that, so I ain't going to play with it. I'm going to go to the Lions, though, covering the 9.5. Pass completions, Jared Goff over 22.5. I think we're going to do some real work underneath, which could lead to some longer drives. Amon-Ra St. Brown said at 6.5. I assume he's going to get some real attention in this game, but I don't honestly care. J-Mo said at 3.5 is lower than it typically is. I think this is maybe the most interesting one specifically. They have some speed, but I don't know, especially if you get a guy like Newton on him, I think that's going to be a real problem. I'd like to see what an Isaac Tesla number could be at. And then finally, I definitely think we're going to get a sack in this game. I really like Alquani Muhammad to get a sack in this one. Plus 104, I think, is at a really good spot. So I'm actually going to take off Amon-Ra St. Brown. If I just go these four, it's at plus 1,000, which would mean that a $10 bet could return me 110. So $100 if I end up hitting this. St. Brown's interesting, but I'm just going to go with J-Mo for now. I think 3.5 is lower than it typically is. You want to get on the action, do that with my bookie. Use code DOSE. Now let's get back to the video. So with that being said, I expect Giovanni Manu to play. The Lions also elevated 2 players from their practice squad for today's game. We may see neither of these guys today, but we'll start off first with the most recent addition, which is cornerback Trey Flowers. And this was after all of these injuries. Dan Campbell said that they were going to need another body for practice specifically. Based on the practice reports this week, it does seem like Terrion's going to be available. So they'll have like essentially 4 cornerbacks, 3 safeties, depending on how you shake that up. So adding another body does make sense just for depth purposes today because we are kind of thin on the back end. But in terms of Trey Flowers, he could play both cornerback and safety for us, but we could see him today. That door could potentially open. I just think it's interesting that you said, hey, we're going to sign a body for practice, and then all of a sudden now he's elevated. I think it speaks, one, we were limited at corner in practice. He played really well in practice, and they liked him. They're like, you know what, we're going to bring him. We're going to make him available. That's what they always say. If the guy's available, it's we expect him to be ready to play in that game. And for Trey Flowers, he was with Chicago most recently in this year's preseason. And I would say that he played pretty well for Chicago. Kind of that mold that they always had where it was a very long corner that was really fast. Ran a 4.45, a 6'3", 200+ pound cornerback that really was a safety going back to college. And I think what you saw in this year's preseason was you saw some flexibility in different coverage assignments they could put him in. Top-down coverage felt, the most consistently used. But that said, it was his footwork in terms of body control. He played within himself really well. There was a lot of efficiency to his movement. He wasn't overly the most loose cornerback. He also didn't show some of that short area twitch or short area burst in some of his transitions either. But I thought he played very controlled as a mover in coverage. His run support, he's been a fine tackler, but that said, he doesn't feel very quick to get off of blocks. I do like his quick trigger against the run, but he does seem like he gets held up a little bit too long when engaged one-on-one in blocking situations. But he's low in his pedal. His footwork's very controlled. He also does a nice job in zone coverage, really squeezing routes, passing routes off, communicating well, getting to his spots. He gets to his spots really fast. Now, he can be a little bit aggressive at times, and you could potentially get him over the top, but he definitely knows where he needs to get to and what his assignment is. So he's fairly assignment sound at the long speed where crossers, drags, he could be sufficient there. He's got the footwork to carry that deep pedal way back into zone coverage, right into a cover 3 spot. He can hold it very long. At the top of the route, he showed some real mirror ability within his footwork, within his hips, leveraging spots so he could stay leveraged on the play. I just didn't see some of that transition burst again to always close that airspace, and it felt like he would give up too much space. Where he flashed to me was really impressed coverage because he's so long that he is efficient with his footwork. He's long, he's disruptive right off the line of scrimmage, and when his hands landed cleanly, he felt very impactful at the line of scrimmage as well because he can definitely run and there's a lot of efficiency there. So you can get quick losses when he's able to get hands on a receiver. He actually felt pretty impactful as a press cornerback, specifically with his length, 34-inch arms. Also, his height does match up well with Cincy having T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. I'm not saying I think that's their plan. I definitely don't think that's their plan. I think Terrion's going to play opposite of Amik likely in this game, and then the slot we'll just kind of see. But I expect a lot of 11 personnel. So at the slot, Avonte Maddox may kick into that role. I don't know. Maybe they go Rocky Sin out wide and they try to put Amik back in the inside. They have some options. There is no Khalil Dorsey today. Evan Cochran from the Cincinnati Bengals. He played a few games for them this past season with injuries, and then this year in the preseason played one preseason game. That was it. Played okay, and then he was let go by Cincinnati. Some people thought they were kind of holding him back so he can make it back to the practice squad, but then they went out. They added Javon Foster. Now he's here with the Lions. To me, Devin Cochran showed some real potential in terms of maybe some flexibility as well as an offensive lineman, but there was plenty of inconsistency, specifically in pass protection. Now, he was playing right tackle, so I don't think there's any way the Lions are looking at him as like, oh, he's our answer this week. I think this is truly a depth move. I do think he could be an impactful jumbo package lineman, though. I think that's on the board. He's got some good quickness off the ball, some good quickness into his jump sets. I think he's at his best when he's attacking as an offensive lineman with some urgency really there. He plays with some real urgency as a zone blocker. Some looseness in his hips. There's some flexibility there to change directions, mirror a little bit in some of the short area. Really controlled on entry, which really shows up as a run blocker, way he kind of hedges blocks or he combos and then climbs up to the next level. But he does it with some real like he wants to move people off their spot. He wants to get in with good inside hand entry placement. Pretty fast hands as well, pretty quick punch and pass protection specifically. And to me, the big thing was here, he didn't feel like he created that much depth in his pass sets easily. So it felt like he could really overset and he would get himself into some tough positions if edge rushers threw some counters at him. There was a lot of aggressive footwork. It wasn't all like kind of minimized and controlled. It felt very aggressive and kind of lungy, which felt like he got him in some really bad spots against speed rushers, specifically when he was out on an island. So I wondered a little bit about his position flexibility, honestly, because of the way that he moved pretty well. Strain wasn't consistent either, just mauling guys, driving guys out the play. Didn't feel like he would consistently create a great latch, so you didn't always feel a great drive. It was kind of like, okay, there's the pop in position, but you also didn't feel an outstanding knockback into entry with strong hands where he could just grip guys and move them. Like, you didn't feel that as much. You kind of felt just more of a good positioning type of blocker. But for all there, I definitely don't think this is like who the Lions are going to go with today. I would be surprised if they did. I mean, I guess it could, but I don't think that's going to be the answer. I think it's going to be for depth specifically here. Could be a little flexibility position-wise here. But overall, those are the moves that have been made for the Lions side of things. No Willie McNeil, right? They say it was 50-50 shot. He's not going to go, though, today. No Zach Cunningham, no Sione Vaki, and no Khalil Dorsey. But I'm hoping this means that if Decker doesn't go, that he, and also I think Aleem for that matter, based on where it sounded like he was at this week, could be potentially ready to go next week, which would be fantastic. And then from the Bengals side, really no updates outside of Shamar Stewart's out for this game as he's been. They still have 4 big investments on that edge position in this game, and we're going to be tested with those guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Shout out to my bookie for sponsoring today's video. Use code DOSE, and I'm out.